kidding.
I'd been used to being a solo artist, and you know, you pay everybody and you keep most of the money. You know about that. But when you're in a band, you split it up.
What is the frustrating thing to see? Is there something?
No, you know, just the way he acted and the way he performed and the way he treated everyone. You know, not just band members. I'm talking about roadies. I'm talking about people. If you tried to interview him, the way he would have treated you and the things that would have went on and the craziness. You know, it just wasn't cool. And what happened to him, I don't know. But the guy went completely, you know, over the deep end on the reunion tour. And I was hoping it's going to be something different than that. And that's why we haven't done it again, and we probably won't do it again unless I would like to see him, you know, completely clean up, and he looks like he's doing better and everything now. And I'd like to be friends with him again, but as it was, I couldn't be friends with the guy. The guy hated my guts, you know, and he hated Michael Anthony, he hated his brother, he hated everybody. He was just a miserable person. The 9 years, the 10 years I was in the band before that were fantastic, and they're in the book too. It talks about the great times we had and the wild, crazy stuff we did. We lived the lifestyle of rock and roll to the T. I mean, you know. We lived it. It was great. And it was awesome. And it's in there, too. Some great stories about being friends and writing great songs. I got How We Wrote Right Now, and I got How We Wrote Best of Both Worlds in there. I got all that stuff.
He put out a press release saying, I quit. A week later, he says I kicked him out. Now, you sticking to both stories, Sam? I'll take a lie detector test.
Good. Time to take one. Well, exactly when? Because this has been going on a long time. Well, the truth of the matter is, the first thing that happened was that I was called by Eddie on Father's Day morning, you know. Eddie just goes, you know, you really frustrate me. You never do anything I asked you to do. And I'm going, well, yeah, I do. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, there really wasn't a problem like this in our whole 11 years of creativity. And he said, but you never do what I asked you to do, and I got so frustrated, I went and got Roth, and we've been working with him, and it's been working out great. And he goes, and you've always been a solo artist anyway, you might as well just go back to being a solo artist. Quote, unquote, exactly that. And I went, wow. I mean, I was floored. I just looked at my wife, and I went, oh, like, you can't believe this, you know?
Hagar says he might have left Van Halen anyway, after criticism from the band of his lyrics and onstage demeanor, as well as its decision to release a greatest hits record.
I probably would have quit by the end of this year. I bet you if we wouldn't have done a record and the greatest hits record, they would have wanted to go out and do tours and press off the greatest hits record, I would have said, I am not doing it. You know, I won't tour on a greatest hits record. That's like basically saying we're over. Biggest waste of time in the world. Strictly money.
People say, though, that you had an objection to the greatest hits record because you were in some way jealous of Roth's legacy. You didn't want to remind the audience that he had been in the band before. Is that true?
Come on, why is the greatest hits record all of a sudden going to remind people that Roth is in the band? Roth reminds people every day that he was in the band. There's no question. Roth will never go away. He never has gone away. There's nothing to do with that.
But all it was a different thing. All of Sam's lyrics contain love.
Yes.
Okay, why can't this be love? And I ain't talking about love. We'll be right back with more fighting after this.
Yeah.
Win, come on.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and so...
It's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks since we last spoke. Nothing Worthwhile returns on a Saturday. Evan Moody, Andrew Gruthius, how the hell are you, my friend?
You just did the Busted Open opening.
Well, don't tell anybody.
On a Thursday!
Yeah, they did something this week where supposedly they kicked Dave LaGreca out, and then they didn't have him on for 2 days, but then they brought him back.
Thank God. Damn.
Some kind of stupid thing.
I was going to start listening again.
Yeah, well,
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great, great clips there. Ricky Gervais absolutely eviscerating Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're a Hollywood guy. I don't even know if you're still an award show guy, but I just want to get your thoughts on Ricky Gervais's monologue.
It was funny, and that's really all that matters. I think that anybody who is offended by it doesn't get it. Like, that's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to roast people. So roast them. They know. Hollywood knows that. Hollywood knows that they're not the foremost expert on, politics and all this stuff. So get up, accept the award, have fun, enjoy it, enjoy the party. You winning an award is not a major event in the world. It is in your life, but not in the rest of ours. So just shut up. Like, I agree, but I don't even think that that's how Ricky Gervais feels. I think he was just trying to be funny, and he was.
No, I think that the last couple of years especially, award shows have gotten so damn tedious. They come up there and they preach about this, they preach about that, environment this, diversity that, this one's rights, that one rights. Meanwhile, their basements are all full of skeletons. And I think it was perfect opportunity to
I agree.
Really go out. Let me ask you this, because Howard Stern did bring this up. Are Hollywood award shows becoming passé in 2020? This new generation of wokeness and mindfulness, is it dumb to have just a bunch of Hollywood actors celebrating themselves?
Okay, I'll tell you what I think about it, because I actually know. When we were kids, there were basically 2 award shows for movies and television, the Golden Globes and the Oscars. Now there are like 10. So the answer is yes, because there's so many of them. You could say the same thing about cable television. You could say the same thing about movies. You could say the same thing. There's so much choice, so much of everything, that nothing means anything anymore. Look at the late night TV shows. There used to be 2. There used to be Johnny Carson and David Letterman. Now there's 2 on every single channel. There's dozens on cable. So there's no must-see anything anymore.
So Hollywood award shows, they don't pull this anywhere near the kind of ratings I'm sure they did in their heyday of the 70s.
Yeah, but nobody
80s.
Does.
Okay.
I don't think anybody does. But to answer your question, people at the award shows, they used to exploit them. Jane Fonda famously did in like during the Vietnam era. They've done
weren't those few and far between?
Way more fewer and far between than now, yes, but now they get multiple platforms to do it. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. And if you notice, the Golden Globes evidently made a decision not to play anybody off. The Academy Awards do. They'll cut you off. But the
Golden Globes play off Joaquin Phoenix?
I thought
they did.
I don't remember.
My thing is, somebody
probably because of language. He kept getting bleeped out. Maybe that was why.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that a lot of companies, a lot of school districts have their teacher of the year. They have their insurance salesman of the year. So I think Hollywood, as a private industry, could certainly have that. But if why not maybe put it on some kind of a web platform, charge a fee, donate that to charity or something like that. Maybe that might be.
I mean, look, I've been teaching for 6 years, and all 6 years when I've won Teacher of the Year, I have never politicized it. No, but you're right. I mean, yes, all companies do that kind of thing.
Are you campaigning in the break room for your Teacher of the Year credentials?
Oh, believe me, there are about 140 teachers in my school, and I probably haven't even cracked the top 140. That's where I am.
I'll tell you what, we'll save that for our top 10 teacher podcast.
But yeah, I mean, it's too much, but everything is excess nowadays. So it's really, for today's world, it's par for the course. Sadly to say.
One last thing, just to wrap up, Jim from North Carolina called into the Howard Stern show this week and asked Howard, was Stern versus Imus the greatest radio feud of all time? Was it?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because it never it never really escalated to where they were, at least not when it was at its zenith. They just talked trash about each other. That's basically all they did. I like the feuds, like the ones with like Mark and Brian and DeBella, where they had to like beg to work and all those. Those are the feuds that had some meat on them. Hearing Imus talk crap about Stern and then hearing Howard talk about crap, it's a pissing contest. It wasn't really like a feud. It wasn't one person doing something to the other. I like the old Howard, the way he used to just destroy John DeBella in Philadelphia. Oh my God, that was incredible radio.
Yeah, maybe it's better put as a rivalry. Do you ever think we'll see anything like this again?
Well, we do. We just don't know about it. I mean, like Mike Francesa and Michael Kay, like there are little feuds, but on a national level, like nobody outside the tri-state area knows who those two guys are. And you know what? If you went to, Kansas, would they know who Don Imus is? Maybe, I don't know. But
yeah, I think that you won't because. I don't know. It's just not cool to get that dirty these days. Those guys, even Imus to an extent, we know Howard had no limits back then. But it's just, I don't know if it would be tolerated. I mean, these guys, went for the jugular. Certainly Howard certainly did at times. I just don't think in this day and age you'll forget even two media types. Maybe hip hop guys. They seem to go at it pretty hard.
Yeah, but they do it with guns.
Oh, yes.
And no, I'm serious. I mean, they do it. They don't talk. They drive by the studio and pump 25 bullets in. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I want to do quickly a shout-out to Juice WRLD.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's offensive, what I just said, is it? I mean,
no.
It's the truth. It's what happens.
If anything, I'm being offensive.
No, it's just the way it is. But I think the guys that we're talking about, they're older... And it's like they probably almost like, what are we doing this for?
I still say Howard looks at Imus's obituary and reaction on the web and media types and uses that as looks at that as maybe somehow a referendum on his own legacy. And we'll certainly touch upon Howard in a lot more detail in later shows, but I got to think Howard looked at that and said, I don't know if I want to go out like that, because the majority of web articles that I read, it minimized Imus's, they called his career great. I wasn't a fan, but he certainly had a large media presence. He was simulcast on two major networks, MSNBC and I think Fox Business, and it really focused in on the naughtiness, the racial comments, and it didn't give a lot to maybe what he accomplished.
Yeah, but you know something, and you're not going to like this, but Howard doesn't have to worry about people being truthful when he goes. Like, they were truthful about Imus. They said, he wasn't that good, he did did some good things, but, they were very pointed and very honest about Don Imus himself. Don Imus never really went the mainstream media route that Howard has. Howard does
simulcast on MSNBC.
No, I'm talking about talk shows. I'm talking about 1 hour sit downs with Anderson Cooper on CNN, like things like that. So Howard, yeah, absolutely. But Howard is much more respected in the media world than Don Imus was. That's why I think that when Howard, hopefully not for a long time.
You don't think that was somewhat of a calculated move by him?
What?
To be more respected?
I don't know. I don't know if he was thinking that way. I just think he was getting older and tired.
Well, hold that thought. Hold that thought, damn it. Because right now we're going to talk about...
But wait, I want to ask you one more question before we get into today's topic. What were you hoping for?
We have no flow. Go ahead, hit me up.
You brought it up.
Go ahead.
My question to you is, what were you hoping to hear from Howard the day after Imus passed away?
I wasn't hoping to hear anything specific. First of all, I will say that day, the next day, when Howard came back from whatever, vacation or from the weekend, I put the show on for the first time at 7 a.m. I was in the gym. It was 5 a.m.
I was not at
West
the gym.
Coast
I was
time.
not at the gym.
Okay, but I could not wait to. Usually, I listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to my Sirius XM app because I could not wait to hear Howard. And again, I think that yin and yang that Howard. I feel like he wants to bust out of the closet and be that naughty guy that he used to be because he ripped Imus very hard at certain times and then was very conciliatory at other times. And, we texted with our friend Craig, and yes, certain times he really ripped him, and then certain times he begrudgingly gave him his respect as a fellow broadcaster. So I wasn't really waiting to hear anything. I was very interested to hear Howard's comments.
Yeah, I was hoping to hear him just be like, good riddance.
He was to a certain extent.
A little bit. Not as much as I would have hoped, but that's just me being a bitter bastard.
You cruel bastard. The guy died. Apparently, I just read the Imus Ranch is up for auction, so
I've got like $75 in my bank account.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Good.
Is Deirdre available?
I don't think she may have.
She may have moved on already.
Yeah.
Is she dating Fred? Or Ronnie? She's dating Ronnie?
Dating Charles McCord.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome.
All
right, so what are we talking about this week?
We're going to talk about the last great American rock and roll band. Maybe their most discussed, maybe their most derided, divisive era. It's Van Halen with Sammy Hagar. But what I first want to ask you is Van Halen the last great American rock and roll band?
That's a great question. I think the last great American. What do you mean by that? Like still standing? Because they're really not.
I thought about it. I said, has there been? First of all, rock and roll has been obviously a lot, very much diminished as the years go by. It's not really played much on popular radio. Hip hop and dance and whatever else seems to be the popular fare of the day. I thought about Pearl Jam, Foo Fighters, Metallica.
U2.
Not American though.
Oh yeah, you're right. Bon Jovi. They're a great band.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I think I still would say Van Halen is still the last great American rock and roll band. I think Metallica is maybe a different genre of music, more like heavier stuff.
Yeah, but I'm going from when they started. And Metallica started, I believe, before Van Halen.
No, they didn't. Metallica was after.
Are you sure?
Yeah, they're younger. I mean, they're older now, but they're probably in their 50s. But they're younger than Van Halen. They probably started...
Lars Ulrich is not like 85 years old?
No, I want to say they're in the late 70s. They started late 70s, where Van Halen started early 70s.
All right. Then okay. I think for me personally, yeah. They're, yeah. Well, I mean, there are other bands that are great that I would still go see in a heartbeat. But Van Halen is one that I'll tell you. I'll sum it up with this: Van Halen is the one that I will always look for news on.
Yes,
always. I don't give a crap what Bon Jovi did for Christmas or whatever. But you tell me David Lee Roth is like screwing around with some brothels in Reno, and I want to read the whole story.
That could be true, knowing Dave. I just read on Bon Jovi new album and summer tour with Bryan Adams.
See, I would go see that for Bryan Adams. I've seen Bon Jovi a bunch of times, and they're great. But
you always have to be a goddamn outlier.
Come on, you and I saw Bryan Adams together.
Bryan Adams, he's very good. I would be excited to see what Bon Jovi comes
up with. The days where we were much closer.
Yes.
Yes. Just kidding. We're both. Well, not that there's anything wrong with it. Okay.
That's right. So when we talk about Sammy, obviously we got to go back to David Lee Roth. Why did David Lee Roth leave Van Halen? For most folks talk about the 1982 cover version of Dancing in the Street as the initial sort of breaking point with the band. There was obviously a very song was synth heavy, synth riff written by Eddie Van Halen. David Lee Roth wanted to, more rock and roll sound. Eddie wanted to use more synth riffs, and then they go from there. That was in Diver Down to their final album with David Lee Roth, 1984. Groo, what do you remember about 1984?
Not
much. You were kind of right?
I was 9, but I will say this, and I don't want to dwell on the Roth era because that's for another podcast. But the first album I ever bought was 1984 by Van Halen, because after a Little League game, I was sitting in a Pizza Hut we had like a team lunch. My dad was there, all the coaches were there and everything, and somebody put the song "Jump" on the jukebox. And I heard it. I was like, oh, my God, that's like the greatest thing. I'd never heard of Van Halen before. I didn't know who they were. But I heard that thing, and literally right after that, I made my dad bring me across the street to the Whitman Mall, and we bought 1984 on vinyl. So that was, and I listened to the album cover to cover, and I knew, like, the next day I knew every song by heart.
So Walt Whitman Mall still there?
It's still there.
Walt Whitman.
It's still there. It's still there. But unfortunately, Van Halen is not. I don't think, really. But in any case, that was my introduction to Van Halen. And although, I didn't see them in concert, I was too young in 84 for that 1984 tour. But then the next thing you know, you're seeing on the, I think it was like the Grammys, or maybe it was like the Headbangers Ball or the New Year's Rock and Roll Ball on MTV. They debuted David Lee Roth's solo singles, California Girls.
Yeah, way to jump ahead, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
Way to jump ahead.
Okay.
Oh my God.
All right. But yeah, I was hooked from that. But to be fair, I didn't become more familiar with their back catalog until later on.
All I asked you about was 1984, buddy. I mean, you give
all
me
right,
like a
1984. The Mets almost beat the Cubs for the pennant.
That is true. The thing is, Van Halen breaking up at that time, they're at really the top of their commercial success with David Lee Roth. 5-time platinum albums, featured the lead single, as you said, "Jump," which again had that synthesizer hook, anthemic lyrics. Was their first and only #1 pop hit under David Lee Roth. It did garner them a Grammy nomination. Other big singles from 1984 included "Panama," number 13 in the U.S. charts. "I'll Wait," also number 13, and of course, one of our favorites, "Hot for Teacher." So we say, obviously that album was a breaking point for the band. In the midst of the 1984 tour, really you're having a struggle for the artistic vision of the band and the sound. And of course, as you said, Roth launched his successful that's debatable, but at the time a successful solo career with 2 hit songs from his Crazy from the Heat EP, a remake of the Beach Boys classic "California Girls," charted number 3 in the United States, and the old standard "Just a Gigolo," number 12. Apparently Roth was upset about Eddie playing music outside of Van Halen and without checking with the band. Also allegations of excessive drug abuse.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What music was Eddie doing outside the band?
I know that he did a soundtrack with Alex Van Halen.
The Wild Life.
I think so.
The Wild Life with Chris Penn.
Even after the Crazy from the Heat EP, Roth remarked that he was definitely open to a return with Van Halen, and that there was a script deal for Crazy from the Heat in which he hoped Van Halen would contribute music for the soundtrack. However, the deal fell through, and so Sammy enters the fray in the beginnings of 1986. Where were you when you heard Sammy Hagar was joining the great Van Halen machine?
I didn't hear Sammy Hagar was joining the machine until 5150 came out. I had no idea what was going on because I was not, I'm a couple of years younger than you, so I just didn't have and that was pre-internet and everything, so we didn't know the comings and goings of everybody. We were led to believe that David Lee Roth doing that EP was just a little side project. And then
you
all of a
didn't
sudden,
think that. I mean, I remember hearing that going. They're broken up. I mean,
I don't remember that, but I was younger, so you know, I was clueless, so I did not know. In fact, on that first song, what is it? Good Enough? Hello, baby. What's that?
Well, the first song.
No, the reason I ask.
Yeah,
the reason I ask is because when Sam, because the album begins with "Hello, baby," I thought it was Dave the first time I heard it until he started singing. But that, you know, so then I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then I saw that Sammy Hagar was the singer, and I was a fan of Sammy Hagar before Van Halen. He had a great solo career. I knew I Can't Drive 55 and Voice of America. Right. And that stuff, and he was all over MTV, and you and I were watching MTV a lot in those days. All kids were.
Wait. I mean, Sammy had a presence, but all over MTV.
Sure.
He wasn't.
If I knew about it,
he wasn't David Bowie.
They were showing the I Can't Drive 55 video like twice an hour, every hour. I mean, that thing was on all the time. But I knew the point is I knew who Sammy Hagar was.
What is the point? You can't. Well, what is the point?
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I was blindsided by it. I wasn't upset about it, but probably because 5150 is a great album. Right.
So from what we understand, Eddie was introduced to Sammy Hagar by a mutual friend and auto mechanic. Sammy was the former frontman for the rock group Montrose, and like you said, was a pretty successful solo artist at the time. He had a hit single, I Can't Drive 55, from his 1984 album VOA, which was produced by Ted Templeman, who did all of the early David Lee Roth, Van Halen stuff.
The plot thickens.
Hagar agreed to join and serve as a rhythm guitarist to add to the Van Halen sound. Of course, you may remember or you may not remember, but I certainly do. Their first appearance together was as a duo, Hagar and Eddie Van Halen, at the 1985 Farm Aid, in which Sammy did a set and then Eddie came out to close with Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll for the audience.
I was not aware of that, Ed.
Okay. And I think Sammy talked about this on the Stern Show when he did this with The Circle, that they had worked on the album at the 5150 studios, and Mo Austin, the president of Warner Brothers, came in and they played Why Can't This Be Love live with Eddie on the keyboard, Sammy on the guitar, and Austin proclaimed, "I smell money."
Mm-hmm. Well, he did.
And as you said, 5150 was a huge hit, becoming the band's first #1 album on the Billboard charts. Why Can't This Be Love charted at number 3. Dreams and Love Walks In was a top 30. To further introduce this new era for the band, the Van Halen logo was changed. The new logo now had elements of the original, but if you remember, it had lines coming out of the sides, the V and the H. Sammy's first album, again, 5150, side 1, Good Enough, Why Can't This Be Love, Get Up, Dreams, Summer Nights, side 2, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In, 5150, and Inside. Initial thoughts on 5150.
Grand Slam as a rock and roll album. I loved it.
The album 5150.
Notice I didn't say a Van Halen album.
But it is a Van Halen album.
That's the gist of this podcast, isn't it?
Well, would you say that Genesis with Phil Collins is not a Genesis album?
No, because Genesis was in the band before Peter Gabriel left. This was a different band. However, let me just backtrack a little bit and ask you a question.
Go ahead.
5150 was a big hit.
I in my notes I said it's their first with Sammy.
Yes.
And in terms of Sammy, it's their best. It's a great album, 5150.
Yeah.
For me, I'm saying my own personal thoughts. It's. I mean, Why Can't This Be Love is just. It's just an. It's a good song.
Yes, but look, we're going to talk about this more.
Let's talk.
We're going to talk. We're going to talk about it more because this was a new type of Van Halen, and it was more pop It was still hard. There was still hard rock in there, but it was more like Dave said in that opening clip. Like, it's all about love. It's all about romance. And yes, bands can evolve, but the original Van Halen was just. It was like if AC/DC was going to go into like some Bon Jovi-ish phase.
All
so
right.
I get. So wait. Let me just.
We'll get to it because
okay.
I want.
Well, my question. I was going to ask you a question though. Would 5150 have been the hit that it was without 1984? Did 1984 bring them to their apex mountain?
I mean, sure. I mean, obviously, you're looking at something chronologically, so you're building off momentum with 1984, and then obviously, it's a big deal because this amazing band's lead singer is leaving, and now they're picking up somebody else. So there was a lot of curiosity. Maybe momentum going into this album. So yeah, I would say in a part, 1984 certainly played a role. I mean, but wouldn't you say that with most? I mean, the previous stuff it sort of builds on the whole band's catalog.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that I feel like Sammy Hagar and the music would not have been as popular as it was if 5150 was coming off of Diver Down instead of 1984. Because, as you said, 1984 was what finally got them to the top of the charts. And huge commercial success. They went from playing arenas to stadiums, and then all of a sudden Roth is gone, and here's Sammy. I just feel like they were riding that wave.
What's your point, though, in that question? I'm curious.
My point is that
I mean, you must feel a certain way. So
yeah, because my point is that there's a reason that Van Halen seems to be the only band that has been able to do that. That has been able to take their frontman and completely replace him and become even more popular than they were before. And I think, yeah.
Would you not say Genesis? Would you not say AC/DC had similar sort of... I'm not saying the kind of music. Don't break me down into some rock and roll snob. I mean, Genesis was massive under Phil Collins.
Yes.
Forget about if you think it's the same music. I'm just saying they were massive under Phil Collins. They certainly changed everything. And while I can't I am a fan of AC/DC. I don't know their discography back and forth. I mean, certainly AC/DC comes to mind as well. I mean, that was a death.
But it was also an early death. And Brian... No, it was. It was early into their run.
Okay.
And Brian Johnson just... I don't know. That was lightning striking. And what was the other example you used? Oh, Genesis.
Genesis and AC/DC.
Yeah, Genesis... Like I said, Phil Collins was already part of the band, so they weren't replacing so much as just continuing without.
Okay.
That to me, that's the difference. And when Bon Scott died from AC/DC, people wanted the band to continue, so they were forced to find somebody else. Here, there was like, all right, what do we do? Like,
yeah, they had a gun to their head. Please continue.
Yeah.
Well,
do you say that facetiously?
Yeah, I do, because I think what you're trying to say is, and I used to feel this way, that somehow I agree the Sammy era Van Halen is a different sound than the David Lee Roth, and then I want to put this sort of to bed, but I don't enjoy it really any less. Maybe I enjoy it for different reasons, but I love some of the Sammy era Van Halen.
I think I'm in your camp with that. I enjoy it, maybe not totally as much, but almost. It's great music. It's just a different band. That's the thing. To me, that's the whole thing. It's not Van Halen. And in fact, I would have accepted it if they called the band Van Hagar at that time. I thought it would have been cool.
Yeah.
Why not? Anyway.
The album 5150 was notable for a number of love songs and ballads, and it was a contrast of the straightforward rock stylings of the David Lee Roth era. And of course, many people did indeed call this new incarnation Van Hagar. Foreigner guitarist Mick Jones was brought in as a producer, as Warner Brothers denied the band full creative latitude going into this album. Reviews for 5150 were mixed, with the overall tone being a positive one. Rolling Stone gave the album 3 out of 5 stars. It was noted when it was announced that Van Halen had completed its talent search and the new voice was Sammy Hagar. I Can't Drive 55, the response, even amongst the most hardened DLR detractors, was, huh? Montrose? Mm-hmm. Despite this, he says, Eddie Van Halen's cheeky genius lies in the ability to think in terms of both complex orchestration and rock banalities. He could still split the atom with this axe. It's Eddie Van Halen's uncanny and intuitive ability that gives the Van Halen machinery its velocity and amplitude. Eddie Van Halen and Sammy Hagar speak each other's language. I absolutely love 5150. For me, it's the first, it's the best, and I usually run that way with a lot of stuff. I know you spoke about it, but let's put a cap on it. Final thoughts on 5150, the opening album for the Sammy Hagar era Van Halen.
Great album, not a Van Halen album. Oh, that's how I see it. Because I'm not.
You're such a cultural.
I am not.
I was you like 20 years ago, and then because I would say no, Journey doesn't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A Foreigner. Now I say all in. Motley Crue. They're all great bands. It's just different music. And
yeah. I didn't say it was any better or worse. I didn't say it was any better or worse. It was just, if you ask me what Van Halen is to me, it's the ultimate party rock band. Van Halen with Sammy Hagar wasn't that. It was more towards pop. Great pop. Phenomenal pop. In fact, I'll give Sammy Hagar the edge over David Lee Roth in almost every category of talent except as a frontman. Better singer, better musician, better everything, better person. I mean, he seems like a great guy. David Lee Roth is a nut job. But as far as magic between two guys, the guitarist and the singer, Dave and Eddie had that, and I don't think Sammy and Eddie could match what Dave and Eddie had.
I could feel the saccharin and corn syrup dripping as
it's the yogurt. It's the yogurt.
As Groo espouses on Van Halen. I agree. I'll even go one step further. I don't disagree. I think you said, because I think David Lee Roth is maybe the greatest frontman in rock and roll. I won't say history, but off the top of my head, I don't want to get into that debate. But talent-wise, David Lee can't hold a candle to Sammy.
100% agree.
Yeah. I mean, although Sammy's voice is starting to shag a little bit, but listen to clips of them singing now. It ain't even close. And
Sammy's a better songwriter.
Yeah, and Sammy's a pretty solid guitar player.
And he's a better songwriter, but Dave and Eddie just made magic.
Okay, so following the release of 5150, they have the 5150 tour, and kind of a surprising thing, Van Halen releases a live DVD called Live Without a Net. Band minimizes the use of pre-Hagar Van Halen songs on the set, other than some of David Lee's best-known classics. They had so that's released. There's Only One Way to Rock, Summer Nights, Get Up, Drum Solo, 5150, Best of Both Worlds, bass solo. Oof. Panama, in which Sammy says, "What is your classic line?" What does Sammy say?
Get your ass out of the door.
That is correct. Love walks in.
Whatever.
An Eddie guitar solo. I Can't Drive 55. Ain't Talking About Love. Why Can't This Be Love? And then, of course, the Led Zeppelin classic Rock and Roll. Have you heard the Live Without a Net, either on Spotify or on on DVD?
I've seen
Any thoughts?
I had it on VHS.
I'll just get to it. Any thoughts?
It was good. If I had paid to see it in concert, I would have hated it because it was like 45 minutes long. Because they played.
I think obviously it's edited. The show is edited down.
Yeah, but I think the set lists of those concerts were pretty much what you said. They touched Panama and Jump, and that was pretty much it. Although Jump was not on Without a Net, but I think they were playing it live. But that's it. So everything else was just a cover here and a cover there, but it was just 5150. And they played a couple of Sammy tunes.
They did. For me, I really actually enjoyed Best of Both Worlds, which is probably my favorite track off 5150. That's a really good live cut. If you have a chance, listen to it. I would highly recommend that. I think that's actually.
Are you talking to me or our audience?
I'm talking to you and the audience.
Oh, I've heard it. I think it's awesome. It's a great song.
I mean, I can.
I remember the video. The video is a great video.
He's like a roller coaster. He just keeps on plowing away. No, I mean, that's probably one of my favorite Sammy era Van Halen songs. Is Best of Both Worlds. All right. Anyway, who cares?
I used to mimic that elbow thing that he did. The best of both worlds.
Interesting visual fashion. Watch what they wear on that.
Yes.
Board.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
All right. So
that has not aged well.
Yeah. Let's move on to Sammy's second Van Halen album. OU-812 was the 8th studio album by Van Halen, released in 1988. The second to feature vocalist Sammy Hagar. Side 1, Mine All Mine, When It's Love, AFU, Naturally Wired, Cabo Wabo, Source of Infection, Feel So Good. That's a good Van Halen song. Sammy Van Halen song. Finish What You Started, another good one.
Mm-hmm.
Black and Blue, Sucker in a 3-piece, and then a cover of a Little Feat song, Apolitical Blues, probably a Sammy-influenced choice right there. Let me go to what Rolling Stone said, 3.5 out of 5 stars. He talks about Eddie Van Halen spraying machine gun-like succession with his guitar. Sammy Hagar sends out that party vibe with his usual savoir-faire. He notes that Van Halen, contrary to purists, grumbling did not wimp out when Diamond Dave hit the bricks, nor did the band go ugh pop. Even though there are some curveballs, Van Halen doesn't always hit the strike zone on this album. Finish What You Started is an unexpected turn into wheat field rock country. Maybe Eddie and company haven't been pushing the envelope, so to speak, far enough in terms of songwriting, but Mine All Mine is a good teaser for the future. The slow stuff is classy radio fare, and at best, OU-812 is a veritable feast of great white. Rock and roll, 3.5 stars. I'll throw it to you, my friend. Thoughts on OU-812?
Even though I like 5150 better, OU-812 is the closest they came to DLR era. Very underrated. I don't agree with Rolling Stone on that one. I think it's better than what Rolling Stone said. OU-812 is a really good rock album.
Well,
song by song. You could throw away that you could throw away that cover. But I mean the Little Feat cover. But the Van Halen song, Finish What You Started, is a great song. Mine Oh Mine is it's a real good album.
Yeah, I wrote here OU-812 has some great tracks here. Mine Oh Mine, When It's Love, which I think might be the best Sammy era power ballad.
Mm-hmm.
Feels so good. Different. It's a little more of a metaphysical synth driven song. Finish What You Started. I really like a kind of sort of an acoustic, harken back to some of the acoustic stuff. I wrote very good tracks here, but it doesn't quite match the intensity of 5150. I was in college when OU-812 came out, and pretty much I thought it was a very good Van Hagar album, but I didn't think it matched 5150. You seem to feel a little bit different.
No, I feel the same. I feel the same.
Who knows what your review?
I feel the same as you.
Good, but it's not.
It's not as great as 5150, but it's still underrated. If you ask Van Halen fans, OU-812 is usually on the bottom between all the Sammy. Balances, but we'll get to that. But yes. OU-812 is kind of forgotten, with the exception of a couple songs. But it's a great album, cover to cover. Yeah. It's a great album. Not as great as 5150, but OU-812 is very, very criminally underrated, I think.
Well, let's move on to what I think is probably I think the most debated Sammy era Van Halen album. It's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, FUCK. It's the 9th studio album.
Big hit.
Right?
Excuse
me?
It was a big hit, right?
Well, I'd like to go over stuff with you. If
I'm just asking a question.
Know your role.
R.I.P. Rocky Johnson.
Yes. Yeah. Saying a blood clot, by the way.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
Tony Atlas was on Busted Open. He had actually, I heard that. Mitch Hassenbein texted me, and I sent the picture of all of us with Tony Atlas from WrestleCon.
Oh, yeah.
That was nice. F.U.C.K. was released in 1991 on Warner Brother Records. It debuted at number 1. Side 1 opens with Pound Cake, Judgment Day, Spanked, Run Around, Pleasure Dome. Side 2, In and Out, Man on a Mission, The Dream is Over, Right Now, 316, and Top of the World. So the album was marketed as the return to the Van Halen hardcore rock roots, with most songs being guitar-driven and the synth and piano sound, the synth being replaced by pianos. The band also reconciled and brought back in producer Ted Templeman, who, as we said, produced earlier Van Halen albums, to return to work on the album. Of course, the album is famous for opening up with the battery-operated power drill for Pound Cake. Top of the World features a riff that was first heard during the outro of 1984 era Jump. Let me go to you before we talk about the reviews, because you mentioned it a little bit. This is I think it's a pretty it's a real big, well, not big, but it's a debatable thing. F.U.C.K. for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. A lot of people like it. A lot of people didn't. What did you think?
It's hit or miss. It's got some home runs as far as songs. As an album from beginning to end, it doesn't really work, but it's got 3 or 4 excellent songs. Right Now is a great song. Top of the World, I love. What were some of the other ones?
Pound Cake, Run Around was another.
Run Around, I like.
Run Around was a good song too.
Yeah. 316. Okay, what's that doing on there? Like,
I don't know.
Hi, Wolfie. But it's not a great album, but it's got some excellent tunes. And yeah, you're right about that riff about Top of the World. And little known fact, the riff from Right Now was originally part of that movie soundtrack, The Wildlife.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was whenever Sammy, and I know we're jumping ahead here, but I just got to say it because I'll forget. But remember when Sammy was talking about the latest album with David Lee Roth, The Different Kind of Truth, and he was like, "Yeah, they were just taking riffs that we did years ago, and blah 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 blah." Well, right. so did they. when right. Hagar was with them, they did the same thing. So
yeah. Well, I think one thing you kind of relayed to me was, because I had never really heard. And maybe I always thought that. I mean, I know I've heard Billy said he's gone back to 1 or 2 songs sort of in the closet back in the years and opened it up again. But I didn't know that a lot of musicians, maybe they do that a lot more than we think.
Well, Springsteen does it all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
It's funny. I'll listen to E Street Radio and I'll hear something and I'll be like, "Oh my God, that sounds just like Independence Day." But I don't have a pen in my car, and I'm like, I want to write these 2 songs down.
Well, the reason is because, like, at least in Springsteen's case and in Billy Joel's case, when they released, even though Billy didn't like to do it, when they released their B-sides, you can hear the genesis of some of their hits.
You're right.
So yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing, and I don't mind it. As great music is great music, whether it's released 30 years ago or today. So it doesn't bother me.
You picked a real bad time.
that gets so much play on Billy Joel Radio. Have you that and House of Blue Light, 2 of like the B-sides that nobody likes.
Yeah,
they're in pretty decent rotation there.
Yeah, House of Blue Light's not great. You picked a real bad times. Got a little bit of guitar, a little bit of rock to it. Not too bad. Rolling Stone gives the album 2 out of 5 stars.
Really? That surprises me.
Explaining it's so stuffed with zigzagging guitars and history that it almost forgets to rock. The guitars are busier, the beats are heavier, but the fun is fleeting. Van Halen has chops to burn, but for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, like its lumbering opening track and its first single, Pound Cake, the results are decidedly stale. Reviews here are decidedly mixed. For me, you still have possibly the biggest Sammy single with Right Now, but the overall critical tone of the album feels kind of heavy, like a miss. Pound Cake, like you said, Top of the World, Run Around are highlights. But I felt the return to classic era David Lee Roth feels like a real miss here. I know you've already spoke about it. Maybe the way it was marketed as a return to DLR, classic era Van Halen, maybe that was a miss. It's just maybe on its own terms, it's not a bad album. But when you sort of trumpeting it as a return to the past, it kind of falls real flat.
Yeah, but see, yes, in hindsight, but at the time, I don't remember the rhetoric that you just said about how it was touted as like a return, but maybe just because I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, but let me ask you a question. Forget about the touting. You listen to For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. You got to know that the guitars are a lot heavier than previous Van Halen albums, especially U8 too.
Yes. So that I give him credit for trying, but it was a miss. I think
they brought back Eddie's old white and red striped guitar for that tour.
The Frankenstein thing, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like I said, it was hit or miss. But I will share an anecdote that involves you, and our two listeners from Camp Wayne. You'll come on.
Can't help himself.
No, but the first time I ever heard anything from this album was when you were the color war general, and your call song was the opening of Right Now, and I still pick that as my favorite color war call song of all time, and that actually opened the door to the rest of the album for me. I didn't even know they had released a new album at the time, but remember what year was that? 92?
I
sound like Billy Joel, 1994.
It's either, I'm going to say 90, 91, somewhere.
Yeah, because at the time, I still wasn't in tune with all the comings and goings of everything. So, I didn't even know Van Halen had a new album until you...
Yeah, it was released in 91.
Yeah, so I didn't even know they had a new album until you did that. And I was like, this is great stuff.
Yeah.
But you know what? To be fair, at the time, I wasn't as passionate about DLR era Van Halen. That happened over time. So I wasn't comparing them at the time.
However, at that time, if you were in any avenue a Van Halen fan, the notion of returning to David Lee Roth and a potential tour was just so exciting. We know that years later it happened, but even through the Sammy stuff, everyone always said, even myself, oh my God, if they ever returned back with David Lee Roth, that's just would be, a bucket list, amazing kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, and so I think people were kind of let down by the fact that the album didn't live up to that hype.
Well,
because the songs that are well liked, the hits from that album are the more progressive sounding songs. Right Now opens up with a piano riff.
Okay.
So it's the more guitar driven songs that are kind of forgotten. So that's why the album is kind of looked at as the weak link.
Yeah, I mean, Top of the World is kind of it's guitars, but it's kind of poppy.
Yeah.
I mean, Pound Cake's a pretty heavy song. Runarounds, it's kind of a poppy.
But it's also the kind of lyrics. Remember, these people, the Van Halen fans, the longtime Van Halen fans, they grew up on the music that was all about getting high, getting drunk, getting laid. Now you're talking about like saving the world, anthems like. When it even Right Now, like the video for Right Now is like everything that DLR era would like revolt against. Yeah. It's like making like trying to save the world, and so I think maybe fans were turned off by that attitude. I know I wasn't, because to me, like I said, good music is good music, and it was. It's just not. It's just the album itself doesn't flow the way the first two did. That's my opinion of that.
Okay. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
For now.
May I speak?
For now.
May I speak?
Please.
Well, this is where we hit. Where we
This
hit
is chemistry, by the way. This is chemistry.
This is not chemistry. This is everyone talking over each other. Let's go to Sammy's fourth and what we know to be the breaking point, fourth and final full-length Van Halen album, Balance. It's Van Halen's 10th studio album, released January 24th, 1995. It's a Warner Brothers Records release. Balance did reach number one on the U.S. Billboard 200 in February of 95, and it did reach triple platinum status by selling more than 3 million copies in the United States. I mean, the reviews overall are very, very poor for Balance. So what I deferred to was I found a little clip from Ian Christie's book, Everybody Wants Some, the Van Halen saga, in which he said there was epic internal fighting amidst Van Halen at this point between Sammy and Eddie. Eddie at this point was attempting sobriety. So if you listen to Balance, you have some real, he was into meditation and all these different things to try to keep his sobriety. And you have songs like Seventh Steel, which featured mystical overtones of piano and all sorts of different things. And of course, the album moves into cheesy love ballad with Sammy territory with "Can't Stop Loving You." The track listing: Seventh Seal, "Can't Stop Loving You," "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do," "Amsterdam," "Big Fat Money," "Strung Out," "Not Enough." I saw that live on Letterman, and boy, oof. Aftershock, "Doing Time," "Bachelortorium," "Take Me Back," "Deja Vu," and "Feelin'." 12 tracks overall. I don't know. This. I mean, it's got to be this is a big time miss. Am I correct?
Big time miss. I mean, literally every song has something that you can criticize strongly. How Many Say I? Wasn't that on? No, that was Van Halen 3. I'm sorry. My bad. But, yeah, this is not a good album. And the funny thing about it, like, "Can't Stop Loving You" is them finally taking the power ballad and putting it to trying to put it to more a rock, like a faster rock thing. And it just, I mean, if you just listen to the chord progressions on that song, I wish we didn't have the copyright issues, because I would love to play that song right now. And just like, it's Eddie, like I could play that, and I'm like sitting there listening to it, like, Eddie, you are so much better than this. And Balance, and the last thing I'll say about Balance, because the less said the better, but whenever Sammy, this is my one disagreement with Sammy whenever he's interviewed, he always talks about how his albums sold so much more than Dave's albums. True. But then I point to Balance, and you said Balance hit number one. Why? Because it was Van Halen. But it was still a horrible album. So,
I mean, is this where we see sort of the law of diminishing returns with Van Halen? Even looking forward, I mean, I know there was, Simple Truth, but I mean, are we starting to see where it's just Van Halen releases aren't an automatic critical and commercial hit?
No, I think you said it. I think you said that it was Eddie. Maybe it was Eddie's sobriety. Maybe he's better when he's wackadoo. But this is you can feel the friction in the band. I remember you said to me once, you gave me a great anecdote about a Crosby, Stills and Nash album. Like, you felt like it sounded like they were recording their parts in different times.
Yeah,
and that's what this album sounds like. That's what Balance sounds like. It sounds like a song like "Not Enough." It sounds like Eddie laid down like the piano thing, and then Sammy came in like 6 months later and just in one take just hit the vocals and left. This album is not good. But was any song like a real hit though? We know the album went to number one, but was any particular song?
I want to say that "Can't Stop Loving You" was I don't know if it was a big hit. Let me see in my notes. I don't have I
don't remember any videos from it.
Yeah, well, I know that "Can't Stop Loving You" did get a little bit of play on MTV. The album itself went to number one. I mean, most reviews call Balance, an uneven result. Many reviews state that maybe Van Halen's 10-year run with Sammy not over, but it's hit a creative roadblock. I mean, obviously, Balance is, of course, most people's least favorite Sammy era Van Halen album. I do like the "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" track. That is one of my favorite Sammy tracks. But this is Sammy's final full album run with Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, Groo? During the recording for the songs Twister, there was escalating tension between Hagar and the Van Halen brothers. The band had recorded Humans Being for the album, for the film Twister. Eddie, unhappy with Sammy's lyrics, rewrote the melody, and Hagar had to come back and re-record the song, a second version of the song. This upset Sammy because he was going through the birth of his child. And of course, from there, the band decided to work on a compilation album. This led to conflict with Hagar, and as you've mentioned before, the group's new manager, Ray Daniels, who was their old manager, Ed Loeffler's replacement, and Alex Van Halen's former brother-in-law. And I agree with Sammy in some, I think his attitude was, why put out a compilation album? We're still a great fucking band, and we're going to put out great rock and roll. And we know that's sort of, we look at most bands and most artists, when they put out that greatest hits, to some extent, it's I don't know if it's over, but it's awfully close. And Sammy's thing was, hey, if you're going to do it, just put David Lee Roth songs on it, or do two sides, one of David Lee Roth and one of Hagar era songs. Any insights as to this time?
Yeah, Sammy was 100% right. And ironically, one of my favorite Sammy era songs is Humans Being.
It's a good song.
I know you love that song too.
I do.
It's a really good song. Yeah. So that's ironic, but with the best of, look at the lack of ego on Sammy. I mean, if what he says is true, whenever he talks about it, he is nothing but gracious to the Dave era. He's so respectful of that music, and he gives credit where it's due. And even when he talks badly about how Roth was in person, he takes nothing away from the band that they were. So for him to say, why don't you just do the best of Volume 1 as just Dave songs, that would have been perfect. And I agree 100% with Sammy. The only reason that I'm happy that they did it was those two new songs with David Lee Roth. I thought they were really good. I know you probably disagree. But
I'll tell you this. They decided to do the compilation album, and David Lee Roth is brought in to discuss what tracks would be included on this planned Van Halen compilation. They get along well, and Eddie invites him up to the house, to the studio, bring aboard producer Glenn Ballard. And again, as you said, 2 songs were added from those sessions to the Best of Volume 1. It was Me Wise Magic and
Can't Get This Stuff No More.
I love Can't Get This Stuff No More. I know you're a me. Well, I think you like.
I love them. I love them both for different reasons. Me Wise Magic is a more contemporary type rock song, and I love it for anthemic reasons. But Can't Get This Stuff No More could have easily been on like Van Halen 2 or Fair Warning. Like, that's what I love about that song.
Yeah, Can't Get This Stuff No More is a great Van Halen Van Halen song.
In fact, I'll put that up against like anything that they did on A Different Kind of Truth, or even most of 1984. That's that is a phenomenal. The guitar work on that song alone is just phenomenal. Better than anything that he did with Sammy, I think.
So they bring in David Lee Roth. Things are going well, and they're asked Van Halen to present an award at the 1986 MTV Video Music Award show. They agree to go as a group. September 4th, 1996, the 4 original members of Van Halen made their first public appearance together in over 11 years. Mm-hmm. The band's appearance at the 96 MTV Video Music Awards fueled speculation of a reunion. But several weeks after the award show, it was discovered that Roth again has a falling out with Van Halen. David Lee Roth says it was all a publicity sham and a stunt by Van Halen and their manager Ray Daniels. Mm-hmm. The next day, Eddie and Alex counter a statement saying that they were embarrassed by David Lee Roth's antics at the VMAs. He was kind of mugging it up behind the camera while Beck had received an award. They were embarrassed by Roth's antics, and so as here today, gone today. David Lee Roth for a hot minute is the Van Halen lead singer, and then he's gone. It's really it's sort of a cool deal in pop culture. David Lee Roth, VMAs with Van Halen. I'm sure you got a lot to say about it. Go.
What the hell did they expect? I mean, it's David Lee Roth.
I remember, though, back in '96 talking about it with you.
Yes, because we had no idea, and I remember seeing it live, and I was so excited. I think you were probably the first person I called. And, by the way, that whole thing, because Dave was on Stern like the next day, or maybe 2 days later.
Yes, but he was positive, sort of adding fuel to the, right?
Yeah.
I think then he came back on again after the whole dust up and,
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Eddie is saying two things right now. He's saying that they just got it together for the best of thing and do all that. They never told him that he was in the band. They never did anything. And my thing is like, well, if you're going to come out and do this, what do you expect the fans to think? The fans are going to believe that this is Van Halen now, right?
Well, do you think now the narrative sort of turns a little bit amongst the Van Halen fans to maybe Eddie Van Halen is a dick after all?
Yes.
You've gone through two lead singers, and now you've gone back to the original guy. And we know that David Lee's probably a lot to handle, but you got to know that deal, as you said, going into it.
Yeah.
I think for the first time people started to say, well, maybe the Van Halens or Eddie, maybe they are hard to work with.
Well, the common denominator is Eddie and Alex because, I mean, you're talking about three lead singers over their career. You're talking about the Michael Anthony thing. It's really, I think it comes down to this. Eddie Van Halen has a massive ego, which he should, and he has a right to. But Eddie, if you examine, which I have, if you examine that Video Music Awards appearance, Eddie is trying his best right from the get-go to take the attention off of the fact that these guys are back together. He comes out, he doesn't even acknowledge what's going on. He says, "Hi, Wolfie," he's like, "We're here to present the award for Best Male Video," while Dave is saying, "Wait a second, this is a big deal. All right, okay. We're all together here, and the crowd's going nuts, and Eddie is trying to divert attention as if he's trying to say, like, this band is Van Halen. It's not David Lee Roth and his players. It's Van Halen." Okay. So, and I think that is what that's been Eddie's thing, and that's been the cause of these bust-ups, and that's okay.
Well, I mean, I disagree with some of the theories behind it, but you have to remember now, you're talking about some 20-plus years since Van Halen started. Eddie's not, a 19-year-old drunk kid. He's in his 40s at this point. He's a dad. I think his approach is still a little heavy-handed, but did you think he was going to have this, get out there and have this, the frat boy, we're brothers in arms approach that they did maybe in '73? I mean, people change a little bit.
Yeah, well, absolutely, but you don't do something like that and expect the world not to notice and not.
Hey, David Lee is kind of mugging it up.
He's doing exactly what he does.
Yeah,
David Lee Roth, for better or worse, is still stuck in the early 1980s. As am I, in many ways. So, David Lee Roth was doing David Lee Roth. So he hadn't really evolved. Probably because his career hadn't evolved. So that's fine. But, again, I go back to the original statement. What did Eddie and everybody else expect? You're going to do this. Unless you're going to go full throttle into it, it's going to blow up in your face. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I remember that video that they released of the Van Halen brothers sitting on a couch explaining.
Yeah, that was one of the clips. That was one of the opening clips.
How it failed with David, and then how it failed with Sammy. Mm-hmm. And I remember Eddie smoking the cigarette, and I remember
Alex is like blowing like smoke rings while Eddie is explaining it. Like they look like so aloof. I mean,
yes,
I remember that. Remember that?
Like these guys are two douchebags. Like it really not.
Talented as all hell, but
right. But it didn't make them. In my eyes, it didn't put them in a positive light at all.
I am 100% in agreement.
Well, we know that Van Halen moves on to Gary Cherone, and maybe we'll touch upon that another time. But if we're staying on course with Sammy, during January 2003, a website that I like to hit every once in a while.
I have an embarrassing confession.
Are you going to tell me you loved Van Halen 3?
No, I did not like the album, but I saw them live in concert twice, and I liked it. There, I said it. We can move on.
All right. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to Sammy. The Van Halen News Desk, VHND.com website reports Sammy Hagar was working again with the Van Halens. There was no official confirmation, just rumor and innuendo.
What year was this?
Late March 2004.
Okay.
Van Halen and Hagar announced that Hagar would reunite with the band for a new compilation, yet again, release, and a summer concert tour of the United States. July 2004, Van Halen releases a new 2-CD compilation featuring now 3 new songs with Sammy Hagar. It's About Time, Up for Breakfast, and Learning to See. These new songs were credited to Hagar, Van Halen / Van Halen, which was unusual at that time, since the normally on prior Van Halen albums, no matter who the lead singer was, the entire band, including Michael Anthony, was credited. This time, Michael Anthony is not credited, and of course, from what we find out, is that Eddie Van Halen did not want Michael Anthony to be part of these initial Sammy Hagar sessions, and Eddie played the bass parts himself instead of Michael Anthony. However, Anthony did provide backing vocals for the 3 tracks and took part in the tour. I do have that compilation somewhere. Do you remember the new Sammy songs? It's About Time, Up for Breakfast, and Learning to See?
The only thing I remember about them is the names. That's because they were not good. Yes, I didn't like them.
It's About Time. Pretty good song.
I didn't like them, but I couldn't. I don't even remember what they sounded like because they were forgettable to me. But it's interesting that Sammy came back into the fold and did exactly what caused the breakup in the first place. The best of thing with all of their hits and new song. Like, he didn't want to do best of. That's why they broke up, and now here he comes back in, and they're doing exactly that.
Yeah, if I'm a betting man, though, I think there's probably a promise on the table to do more, and so maybe Sammy's saying, "Let's dip our foot in the pool and let's get it going. Let's do 3 songs."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the songs were passable. Here's where it gets again a little dicey for the Van Halens. The summer tour 2004, it was successful, grossed over $55 million. And Polestar listed the tour in the top 10 grossing tours of 2004. Reviews of the tour, however, were mixed at best. Wolfgang, Eddie's son, comes on stage and plays guitar with his father during the 316 track, a song dedicated to his son, taking its name from his birthday. There's a lot of clips on YouTube, Eddie being drunk, fan shot footage of poor playing. But at the band's final show of the tour in Tucson, Arizona, Eddie smashes his guitar and ends the show. After the tour, things break down. At first, Hagar is a little bit conciliatory after the tour, saying, "Hey, let's take some time to think about what we're doing." There is some rumors of Eddie still having problems with alcohol during that tour. Hagar states he's done with Van Halen and wishes that everyone would have taken it more seriously. Despite this, Eddie says he himself is satisfied with the tour. Groo, you were there live in 2004 to see Sammy Hagar with the reunion tour with Van Halen. Forget these reviews. Let's get your professional, coherent, cogent review. Do it now.
Okay, you got to give me a couple minutes on this one. So this was one of the worst concerts I've ever seen for a couple of reasons. First off, full disclosure, it did not help that the previous night I was at a private party in Los Angeles that hired Eruption, the early Van Halen tribute, to play, and it was one of the coolest things I ever saw. I mean, do you know about Eruption? Do you know about that band?
I've heard about it, but you love giving yourself a creed, like a
Well, no, I have to. It affected. It probably.
Party,
but wait, it probably affected.
Bryan Adams had a private party.
That was my Hollywood era. Yes. So,
I'm aware of Eruption.
But again,
are you aware of? Hold on, I've seen Van Halen.
I've heard of them. Yeah, I've never seen them.
I did see Van Halen. That was a joke though, which obviously went over your unshaven cheeks. No, I saw Van Halen.
Well, anyway,
Eruption times 2.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Now I got to put the parental advisory thing on.
Let me hear your exposition.
So I think that hearing all those songs, played to perfection the night before probably impacted. But here's the takeaway from that show: it didn't seem like Eddie was drunk. It was Eddie over here on the right. And Sammy and Michael Anthony over here. It was like Sammy and Eddie had no chemistry, and you could tell. It was just tangible. The set list was all over the place. I remember they opened the show with Jump, and you just don't do that.
What did they close with?
I don't even remember. I couldn't tell you. But
Shoddy.
Yeah, well, it was just not. And in fact, we might have left early.
How do you know? Wow, really?
Yeah, and you know me, I don't do that.
That's a stunner. Yeah.
It was a school night though.
Okay.
No, but what were you just gonna ask me?
No, I'm saying you don't remember the final song of the show.
I don't.
I'm curious what they would close with.
Well, I'm sure Van Halen.
Got to be a Sammy track to close.
Oh yeah. It wasn't Panama. I know that. Jump they opened with. Maybe it was Top of the World, something like that. But either way, it just goes to show you that you could play the great songs, and Sammy was in great voice. He always is. But you got to have chemistry up there, and it was obvious that it was not gelling, and it was not. I'm sure to a casual fan, it was probably a good time, but as someone who was very familiar with the band, you could see them unraveling, and the concert sucked.
Okay.
I liked the Van Sharon concerts much, much better, and I was shocked that I did. This was a bad show.
That wraps up, for all intents and purposes, the Sammy Hagar-led Van Halen story. We know that Van Halen ends up reuniting indeed with David Lee Roth in the fall of 2007. And I think, for me and like a lot of people, this was a bucket list concert of sort for many of the classic era Van Halen fans. The idea of seeing one of, as we said, the last great American rock and roll bands back with their original lead singer excited many. We know that the results, and maybe we'll debate it another time, great, mixed. No one's ever called David Lee Roth a great vocalist. So that takes us to 2020. Many Van Halen fans, such as you and me, are starved. Maybe starved. But yes, I do look online every once in a while for Van Halen news, hoping for one more run with some incarnation of the band. Internet rumors have Eddie Van Halen again maybe being sick, possible another bout of cancer or oral cancer. Sammy continues to play live with his band The Circle, and David Lee is starting a residency, and I'm giving 2 oy vey, out in Las Vegas. Probably the best spot for him to perform, but oh boy, I saw some clips and it's not good. So I wanted to ask you, are we ever going to see Van Halen in some form or fashion live ever again?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. I don't think we'll see it as like a tour but I can't, unless Eddie is really truly very ill, I can't see them just fading away. I can't see them.
Haven't they?
Well, no, but I can't. If I'm Eddie Van Halen and I can still play, I'm gonna want to go out with some kind of bang. So that's why I say that. I say that I'm going to want to do one more thing, and say, look, this is it. Maybe it's that Dave and Sammy reunion, something. I don't know, even though Dave really can't sing, but people would still show up because it's still fun. But I do. The answer to the question is yes, I do. Something.
Yeah. I think the best you can get might be something similar to Pink Floyd, where they did that one show. The set at Live 8. I think maybe you're going to get one thing. I just, these guys are getting older. Eddie's possibly sick. I think I agree. I don't think I don't see a tour, but maybe a one-off appearance or something limited. But it's running out of time, and it feels like tensions are still pretty raw in the Van Halen camp.
Well, I think that speaks to our theory that maybe Eddie and Alex are just dicks, but that's okay. Because like I said, think of all the bust ups that they've had with people. It's obvious. But isn't it ironic though that like the one person who is obviously in phenomenal health as far as kept himself like in great shape physically and whatever is the one whose voice is gone? Dave? I mean, look at him. He's right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, Sammy seems to be pretty spry for a 70-year-old.
But he was, but if you, for a 70-year-old, yes, absolutely. But like, he's always been kind of a schlubby-looking kind of guy. But his voice was incredible, still is. But Dave, I mean, if you look at him, I mean, he's just in phenomenal shape.
He's like an anorexic at this point. He's like a waif.
Hey, whatever works.
A strong gust of wind could blow him over. I think if Michael Anthony was on stage doing those vocals, it'd blow him over. I mean,
well, he always had a better voice, Michael Anthony.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, wrapping up the Sammy era Van Halen, not comparing it to David Lee Roth, which could be on another podcast at another time. Mm-hmm. I just want your final thoughts. The music of Van Hagar.
Very, very good music. Lots of fun. Miraculous to be able to do what Sammy Hagar did and take the band from where they were and continue on. I take nothing away from them. So I won't compare them. They were a great rock and roll band in both factions. Absolutely.
Was Van Hagar similar? I'm going to throw this comparison, like kind of almost like a Journey.
No, Journey was way poppy.
Okay.
I would say more like take the heaviest Bon Jovi stuff, and you've got Van Hagar. That's what I think. Like what's the heaviest like Bon Jovi, like the most hard rock Bon Jovi stuff?
I think of like Slippery When Wet, Let It Rock.
Okay. Raise Your Hands, stuff. Like stuff like that. That's the same, and ironically, or not, maybe not ironically, that's like the same year as 5150 came out. So that's the way I see Van Hagar. And like I said before, I wish they would have called the band that. Why not? It's not Van Halen anymore. It's this. Van Halen was the original four. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much.
Maybe, but yes. So the answer to the question is great stuff, and I'm glad what happened with Roth happened, because we would not have gotten the music that we did with Sammy. It was still great music. Great music is great music, and then the reunion, at least the first few years of it with Roth were great, but we'll talk about that another time. But yeah. I am grateful for the Sammy era, and I think it was more good than bad.
I agree with everything you said. The only thing I will add is I stopped. I don't know if it was musical snobbery, but I was, in my 20s and my 30s. I had my nose up to sort of, the Journeys and maybe to some extent the Van Hagar, and now I take it for what it is. It's great music. It might be different music, but it's great music, and I love some of the Sammy Van Halen stuff.
Yeah, and you know what?
Just as much as Dave, but maybe for different reasons.
Yeah, and you know what? If Van Halen came back and it was Sammy, not Dave, I would go.
So would I.
Absolutely, I would go. And like I said, it's there. It's a part of history. And I have an incredible amount of respect for Sammy Hagar. Even though I still choose the first incarnation of the band, my respect for Sammy Hagar, the way he's carried himself through all of this, like he always takes the high road, and just he's kind of like, he has the same attitude I do. It's like, let's just play, man. Let's just go out and have fun. Why does it have to be such a, this is rock and roll. It's not such a big deal.
So are you telling me after this podcast you're going to go drink some tequila, put on your board shorts, and go wakeboarding
Cabo Wabo
at Fort Lauderdale Beach?
No, I'm flying to Cabo.
All right.
But actually, I know you're about to end it, but I want to ask you one question, because one thing we didn't really mention was the Michael Anthony factor. Is that different? Because
I'll talk about it
because he went with Sammy everywhere.
Yeah, we did touch upon it. What can you say about it? It seems to lead itself to Eddie's ego. I mean, Michael Anthony, that high vocal, background vocal is so integral to the Van Halen sound. Mm-hmm. And, while I was there for the David Lee Roth reunion and they had Wolfie, and I can't say that it was terrible. I can't say I really fixated on it. It just didn't seem right to call it a Van Halen reunion tour. I don't care if it's David Lee, Sammy, Gary.
Actually, they didn't. We did. They did. They weren't billing it as and I knew. And
all right, come on,
I'm telling you,
split hairs.
I'm telling you
this all the time.
Well, you just said.
What I'm saying to you is, it just didn't seem right to not have Michael Anthony on there.
Oh, that I agree with.
Playing the bass,
yes.
and let me hearing in those, doing those classic background vocals.
Yes, that I agree with.
Other effort.
But they never tout. In fact, when David Lee Roth first announced it, he was like 3 parts original, 1 part inevitable. Like the 3 of them, and then plus Wolfie. So it wasn't like they were saying this is the original band. They never really said that. They just said this is who we are now.
Yes, we saw the press conference too.
Yeah, we looked at it as a reunion because we made it all about Dave, and I'm glad that we know that it's not. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
All of you out there can't see it, but you will love the look on his face, right? It's getting hot in Arizona.
Well, you want to talk about some of our future shows?
Yes. What do we got coming down the pipeline?
We'll base it on Saturday, but it may not be that exact date. But January 25th, Groo, we're going to talk about the 2020 WWE Royal Rumble preview.
Yes.
Want to give the fans a preview on what might we be talking about then?
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about what we think is going to happen with Brock Lesnar. I have some thoughts, and I'm sure you do too. I think, yeah, I know. I think they're putting the focus on that, so we'll definitely be talking about that.
Let me ask you real quick and keep it concise. Happy with what you've seen on WWE programming as of late?
Not happy, but happier than I have been.
All right. February 1st, it's going to be 12 Billies. It's Billy Joel's 12 Gardens run. We're going to talk about the Piano Man from 2006 to today. Andrew, what might we be talking about with probably our most debated, iconic pop rock performer? We're going to talk about Billy 2006 to today. What might we talk about?
Well, what are we not going to talk about? Because most of what we always talk about has happened since then. So I'm actually really excited about that one because we're definitely going to argue with that. As we always do.
It's always a given. Come on.
Yeah. But I'm really looking forward to that because I have a lot of thoughts about that. And what's funny about the whole thing is that no matter what we say or how negative our thoughts are, we still are the first ones in line to go.
Sure.
And we could say the same thing for all this stuff. As much as we might complain about WWE, as much as we might complain about Van Halen or whatever, we're still going to be there, and that's what I love about it. Because it's great to... All right. He's watching me. Yeah, I'm waxing poetic, and I was going to say,
you don't think we've hit a little bit of a saturation point with Billy? We don't go to everything like we used to. We did pick and choose over the last couple of years.
Well, that's because when we used to go to everything, we were living in the same area. You still go when he's in Arizona. I still go when he's here. So, I mean, and we both just went in New York in November. So
that was a residency show with great promise.
But it's still, there's still expensive tickets. So,
that's true.
But we still do it. I'll still go see Meatloaf. No, I won't. Actually, I don't think I would. But yeah. So I think it's just great that we have these things to be passionate about, even if they're not living up to our expectations. But that's what this is all about. If we didn't have anything to be pissed off at, why do a podcast in the first place? Even if it's at each other.
Yes, February 8th, Howard Stern, The Serious Years, Part 1. We're going to talk about the King of All Media's last days of K-Rock.
Yes.
January 9th, 2006, first show at Sirius. We will run through the end of K-Rock to the beginnings of the Sirius era of Howard Stern, ending with the departure of Artie Lang.
That's where we're ending. Okay, good.
Part 1, Andrew, what might we discuss and debate and argue and fight over then?
I don't know if we're going to be arguing much. I think you and I are on the same page with a lot of that stuff.
Don't give it away.
I'm not. I'm really looking. I'm looking forward to all these, but that one, there's so much there, and there's so much to analyze. And so many different sides to the story. It's actually pretty similar to Van Halen with the cast of characters. So yeah, I'm psyched for that one too.
February 15th, Howard Stern, The Serious Years Part 2.
Ooh, we're going 2 in a row for Howard. I like that.
Artie leaves and the Stern Show evolves into the 3-day-a-week interview gabfest. We will talk about the continued evolution of the King of All Media to today. And what might the future hold, if any, for Howard and the crew? Andrew? Howard Stern, Serious Years, Part 2.
Again, a lot. And that's what's fascinating about Howard Stern is we can do 2 shows and talk about completely different things. There's, so much to unpack after Artie leaves to today. And we do it on a daily basis. I mean, we text back and forth. With so much stuff, and I think the death of Imus, like we talked about, has something to do with that. So I'm really I love this slate of shows that we've got coming up. I'm really excited to talk about them.
Have you heard at all Artie's podcast?
No, I have not, because I honestly the reason is because I've seen Artie live. He's just that chemistry that he had with Howard. I long for it if I hear Artie talk, so it's hard to listen to.
Yeah, most people say the reviews, he's not a good front guy for a podcast.
Exactly. So
okay.
But these are I'm looking forward to all of these.
Well, we got 4 shows lined up, and we will see everybody again next week, January 25th, for the WWE Royal Rumble preview.
Before while you're closing out, should I break with tradition and give him a little Van Hagar, or should I stick with our theme song here?
Give him a little Van Hagar to close out the show.
We'll do that. All right, so what do we got?
Well, we'll see. We'll talk again on January 25th for the WWE Royal Rumble preview.
Mm-hmm.
Go back into the world of sports entertainment.
Love it.
All right.
We haven't in a while, so I'm looking forward to it. And we got Mania coming up. We're going to Mania in Tampa, so I'm sure we'll have at least 4 shows that weekend.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly do a preview before.
Yeah,
and
the Hall of Fame show, definitely.
Yeah, we'll definitely. Yeah. Well, we'll touch upon the Hall of Fame, I think, when we talk about the Royal Rumble preview as well.
Yeah, so we got a lot of stuff coming up for all 2 of you out there.
All right, well, Groo, it's been a blast.
As always,
and, I will bid you a fond adieu.
And 1, 2, 3, rip 'em.